Mikhail Gorbachev, the man who changed the course of history, the former Soviet leader who brought an end to the Cold War, he passed away at the age of 91. His death was announced on Tuesday by Russian news agencies, who said that he died at a central hospital in Moscow after a serious and long illness. And tributes immediately started pouring in. Gorbachev's relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin was difficult at times. But still, Putin expressed his deep sympathies to the family. UN Secretary General called Gorbachev one-of-a-kind statesman. European Union President Ursula von der Leyen praised him as a trusted and respected leader who opened the way for a free Europe. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he admired his courage and integrity. US President Joe Biden called Gorbachev a rare leader who had the imagination to see a different future and the courage to risk his entire career to achieve it. Born on 2nd March 1931, Gorbachev was one of the most influential political figures of the 20th century. Gorbachev was regarded fondly in the West, where he was affectionately referred to as Gorby. He presided over the dissolution of a Soviet Union that had existed for nearly 70 years. When he came to power in 1985, his biggest goal was to revive his country's stagnant economy and overhaul its political processes. His efforts became the catalyst for a series of events that ended the communist rule for just and not just within USSR, but also across its former satellite states. He also won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990 for negotiating a historic nuclear arms pact with US leader Ronald Reagan. His decision to withhold the Soviet army when the Berlin Wall fell a year was seen as key to preserving the Cold War peace. But as loved as he is by the West, at home, Gorbachev remained a controversial figure. For Putin and many Russians, the breakup of the Soviet Union was a tragedy, bringing with it decades of mass poverty and weakening of Russia's stature on the global stage. As the USSR collapsed, Gorbachev was succeeded by the younger Boris Yeltsin, who became post-Soviet Russia's president. From then on, Gorbachev was relegated to the sidelines, devoting himself to educational and humanitarian projects. Over the years, many of his major achievements have been rolled back by Russian President Vladimir Putin. And joining us now is Raymond E. Wekre, Jr., former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Trade Development from Washington, D.C. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, so Mikhail Gorbachev was one of the most influential leaders of Russia. He's passed away at the age of 91. He was particularly lauded in the West. He also won a Nobel Peace Prize. My question to you is, how is the West reacting to his demise?
Well, I think that the West, by and large, and particularly those of us in the United States who were there, as I was, at the end of the Soviet Union, recognize that he was an innovative and a great leader. He was one of those rare leaders who can rise above what is politically expedient for him for a greater good. And the greater good in this instance was ending the Cold War without violence. He understood the power of nuclear weapons and the ability of nuclear weapons to change the whole face of the world. He understood that just like war, you have to wage peace. And it was really quite remarkable that in view of the long animosity of the Cold War, he was able to bring that to an ending without violence. So I think that he will be remembered for that. He was a good partner with Ronald Reagan and later George Bush in doing that. I also think that he is going to be contrasted with Vladimir Putin in the present situation. You mentioned rollback. And there certainly has been rollback and a reversion to the old way of thinking the old way of thinking really being the Russian Empire, controlling other nations, having a sphere of influence. And unfortunately, unlike Gorbachev, Putin has decided that you can go back and use violence to be able to accomplish national aims. And Gorbachev was not that. He knew about perestroika, the need for restructuring if you were going to ultimately be prosperous. He knew about the glasnost, the opening in terms of civil rights and civil liberties. So I think it's a sad day for the world, really, and a day of appreciation in the United States for the fundamental role that Gorbachev played.
Right. You mentioned about Gorbachev's pivotal and important role in ending the Cold War. He presided over the dissolution of a Soviet Union that had existed for nearly 70 years. Can you give us more details about his role in doing so?
Well, the Soviet Union really was nothing but the old Russian Tsarist empire. The communists took it over when they came to power in 1917, but it really goes back a lot farther than 70 years, and it's the old way of measuring greatness, and that is, can you control other people, other countries, take resources from them? That was not his viewpoint at all. Perhaps it was because on his maternal side he had Ukrainian roots, so as well as the Russian roots, he had Ukrainian roots, and he understood. And his grandparents had been arrested and put into prison by communists. So even though he rose as a communist leader. He had been to Moscow State University, and he had an appreciation for the longer tides of human history. And that is that empire building and authoritarianism in an age of nuclear weapons and devastation of war is not the way to go.
Thanks, Raymond, for joining us at WION at this very hour. Thanks very much.
Thank you.